Wakefulness. This is the stage right before sleep actually begins, when the brain is still alert, but the body starts to relax in preparation for rest. Brainwave activity during this stage is fast and irregular, similar to what's measured during a normal waking state, though eye movements slow down and muscle tension gradually eases. Some people experience a brief hypnagogic jerk during this transition, a sudden muscle twitch that can feel like falling, which is thought to be a harmless quirk of the nervous system settling down. This stage typically lasts only a few minutes before the body slips into the first true stage of sleep. NREM. Stage 1. This is the lightest stage of sleep, acting as a short bridge between being awake and being fully asleep. Brainwaves slow down noticeably compared to wakefulness, muscle activity decreases further, and it's common for a person to still be aware of their surroundings, sometimes barely registering sounds or movement nearby. This stage usually lasts only a few minutes, and it's also the easiest stage to be woken from, which is why someone startled awake shortly after dozing off often insists they weren't really asleep at all. NREM Stage 2. This stage makes up the largest portion of a typical night's sleep, often accounting for around half of total sleep time. Body temperature drops, heart rate slows, and brain activity shows distinct bursts called sleep spindles, along with sudden waveform spikes known as K-complexes, both of which are believed to play a role in memory consolidation and blocking out external disturbances. The body is fully relaxed at this point, though it's still relatively easy to wake someone during this stage compared to what comes next. NREM. Stage 3. Often called deep sleep, this stage is where the body does most of its physical repair work. Brainwaves slow down dramatically into long, rolling patterns, blood pressure drops, breathing becomes slow and steady, and growth hormone is released to support tissue repair and muscle recovery. This is the hardest stage to wake someone from, and people roused during deep sleep often feel groggy and disoriented for several minutes afterward. Children and teenagers spend a much larger portion of their night in this stage compared to adults, which is part of why growth and physical recovery are so closely tied to sleep quality during those years. Slow-wave sleep. Closely tied to deep sleep, this term refers specifically to the large, slow delta brain waves that dominate the deepest portion of NREM Stage 3. These waves move in long, synchronized patterns across the brain, a stark contrast to the fast, chaotic activity seen during wakefulness, or REM. Slow-wave sleep is when the glymphatic system, the brain's own cleanup process, becomes most active, flushing out waste products that accumulate during waking hours. Reduced, slow-wave sleep has been linked in research to memory problems and has become a growing area of interest in studies on aging and cognitive decline. REM sleep. Standing for rapid eye movement, this is the stage most closely associated with vivid dreaming, named for the way the eyes dart back and forth rapidly beneath closed eyelids. Brain activity during REM actually resembles wakefulness more than any other sleep stage, yet the body enters a state of temporary paralysis in the arms and legs, a protective mechanism that stops people from physically acting out their dreams. REM sleep is thought to play a major role in emotional processing and memory, and the amount of time spent in this stage increases with each sleep cycle throughout the night, which is why the most memorable dreams tend to happen closer to morning. Sleep. Spindles. These are short bursts of brainwave activity that appear mainly during NREM Stage 2, lasting only a second or two, but occurring dozens of times throughout the night. Researchers believe spindles act almost like a gatekeeper for the brain, filtering out external noise and disturbances so that deeper stages of sleep aren't easily interrupted. They're also linked to memory consolidation, with some studies suggesting that people who produce more spindles during sleep tend to perform better on memory-related tasks the next day. K-complexes. These are single, large waveform spikes that appear alongside sleep spindles during NREM Stage 2, standing out sharply against the otherwise steady rhythm of brain activity. A K-complex can be triggered spontaneously by the brain or in response to an external stimulus, like a sudden noise, acting as a kind of built-in circuit breaker that suppresses arousal and helps the sleeper stay asleep despite the disturbance. Some researchers believe they also play a role in processing and filing away memories formed during the day. Sleep cycle. Rather than progressing through the stages just once, the body moves through a repeating cycle of NREM and REM sleep roughly every 90 minutes, with a full night typically consisting of 4 to 6 such cycles. Early cycles in the night tend to contain more deep sleep, while later cycles shift toward longer stretches of REM, which explains why waking up naturally in the early morning often comes with the memory of a dream still lingering. Understanding this cyclical pattern is part of why sleep experts emphasize consistent sleep duration and timing, since waking up in the middle of a deep sleep stage tends to leave a person feeling far more groggy than waking up between cycles. Sleep onset. This refers to the transition point where wakefulness ends and true sleep begins, typically marked by the shift into NREM stage 1. The time it takes to reach this point is known as sleep latency, and it's often used clinically as a marker of sleep health, since taking either too long or falling asleep almost instantly can both signal an underlying issue. A healthy sleep onset generally takes somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes, giving the mind just enough time to disengage from the day without lingering too long in restless wakefulness. Hypnagogia. This is the strange, dreamlike state that occurs during the transition from wakefulness into sleep, often producing vivid but fragmented sensory experiences, like flashes of imagery, sounds, or the sensation of falling. Unlike full dreams, hypnagogic experiences tend to be brief and disjointed, sometimes blending real thoughts with surreal, illogical content. Many well-known creative insights and ideas have reportedly emerged during this state, since the brain is loosely organized enough to make unusual connections but still coherent enough for some of it to be remembered. Sleep inertia. This describes the groggy, disoriented feeling that follows waking up, particularly when someone is roused from deep sleep. During this period, reaction time, memory, and decision-making are noticeably impaired, sometimes for up to 30 minutes or more, even though the person may appear fully awake. Sleep inertia is a key reason why waking up in the middle of a sleep cycle, rather than at its natural end, tends to leave people feeling far worse than a shorter but well-timed rest. REM rebound. This occurs when someone who has been deprived of REM sleep, whether through illness, medication, or simple sleep loss, experiences a surge of extra REM sleep once normal sleep resumes. The body appears to treat REM as a biological need that must eventually be repaid, pushing a person into longer and more intense REM periods to make up for what was lost. This rebound effect is often accompanied by unusually vivid or intense dreams, which is part of why people recovering from sleep deprivation sometimes report unusually memorable or strange dream content. Lucid dreaming. This is a state that occurs during REM sleep, in which the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming while the dream is still happening. In some cases, this awareness allows a degree of conscious control over the dream's events, characters, or environment, though the experience varies widely from person to person. Researchers study lucid dreaming using brain imaging that shows a blend of REM-like activity alongside patterns typically associated with waking self-awareness, making it a unique middle ground between sleeping and conscious thought. Sleep paralysis. This happens when the natural muscle paralysis of REM sleep persists briefly into wakefulness, leaving a person conscious but temporarily unable to move or speak. It typically lasts anywhere from a few seconds to a couple of minutes and is often accompanied by a sense of pressure on the chest or vivid, sometimes frightening hallucinations. Although it can feel alarming, sleep paralysis is generally harmless and is thought to result from the brain waking up slightly out of sync with the body's release from REM-related paralysis. Power nap. This refers to a short, deliberately timed period of daytime sleep, usually lasting between 10 and 20 minutes, designed to boost alertness without allowing the sleeper to fall into deep sleep. Because it's kept brief, a power nap typically stays within NREM stage 1 and the early part of stage 2, avoiding the grogginess that comes from waking out of deeper stages. Studies have shown that even this short amount of rest can measurably improve concentration, mood, and reaction time for several hours afterward. Biphasic sleep. This is a sleep pattern in which rest is split into two distinct periods within a 24-hour cycle, most commonly a longer stretch at night paired with a shorter nap in the afternoon. Historical and anthropological evidence suggests this pattern was far more common before artificial lighting extended waking hours into the evening, and it remains a normal, culturally accepted practice in many parts of the world today. Some sleep researchers argue that a natural afternoon dip in alertness makes biphasic sleep a more biologically aligned pattern than a single consolidated block. Polyphasic sleep. This describes a sleep schedule broken into multiple short periods spread throughout the day rather than one long block at night, sometimes involving several brief naps in place of traditional sleep. While some individuals have experimented with extreme polyphasic schedules in an attempt to reduce total sleep time, most sleep researchers caution that this approach tends to interfere with deep sleep and REM cycles, ultimately leading to the same cognitive and physical costs as chronic sleep deprivation. It remains more of a lifestyle experiment than a medically recommended sleep pattern. Segmented sleep. This is a historical sleep pattern in which a person's nighttime rest was divided into two separate blocks, often referred to as a first sleep and a second sleep, with a period of quiet wakefulness in between. Historical records suggest people during this waking interval might pray, read, or simply reflect before returning to bed for the second segment of rest. This pattern largely disappeared with the introduction of widespread artificial lighting, though some modern sleep researchers point to it as evidence that consolidated, unbroken sleep may not be as universally natural as commonly assumed.